Hi, and welcome to our look at Mishnah. Today we're going to be discussing the first Mishnah in Pesachim, which deals with Bedikas Chametz, the search for Chametz on Passover, on Pesach. The Mishnah will be discussing the when and where we're going to have to search for the Chametz. But before we go into the Mishnah, I'd just like to maybe give a brief introduction by discussing certain concepts of searching for Chametz, and obviously getting rid of it before Pesach. As we know that one cannot own Chametz on Pesach, one cannot own leaven on Pesach, on Passover. What does one have to do to be able to get rid of it? Well, he can check for it and destroy it, or he can nullify it, make it ownerless as the dust of the earth. The question is, why are both methods required? That both methods, one has to check and one has to make ownerless. The reason that bittul, that nullifying alone is not enough, is that bittul, nullifying, making ownerless, relies completely on a person's thoughts and feelings, and people differ in their attitudes. The rabbis were concerned that a person may possess chametz of high financial value and may not be prepared to renounce it fully. Although he may say that it is bottled, it is nullified, hefker, ownerless, and considered like dust, in his heart he may not resolve firmly and fully to renounce it. Since it is still in his domain, he would thereby be violating the prohibitions of bali ra and bali matzeh. It shouldn't be seen any leaven or any chametz, or shouldn't be found. Thus the necessity of destroying the chametz. Another reason mentioned by the rabbis is that since one is accustomed to chametz the entire year, one eats chametz, one eats leaven, whether it be cakes or bread or the like, should it actually remain in his home during Pesach, during Passover, even after its renunciation, he may forget and eat it. Therefore the rabbis require that a person search for all chametz in his domain and destroy it. Let's now go in and look at the Mishnah. Ola arba asa. The night that is before the 14th of Nisan, boidkin es chametz. We search for chametz in all places that it could be found, for the sake of destroying it, from the reasons that we've already mentioned. Lo'or ner. We're going to do that to the light of a candle that is good for searching. Even though that it's permitted actually to leave the chametz for the next day until half day, after that time it's prohibited to own it. That's the time the prohibition starts of Erev Pesach. Nevertheless, the rabbis fixed up that one has to check for the chametz at the night before, even way before the prohibition starts, because people are then found in their houses, and we know that they're going to check. Another reason is that the mitzvah of checking by a candle is to check by a candle, and when is a light of a candle, when is it at its best? It's obviously better at night than by day. Nevertheless, if one did not check by the night, and he checks by the day, he still needs to use a candle. Kol makom she'ei machnisim by chametz, the Mishnah goes on and says, every place that chametz has not been brought in there the whole year, ein tzarich b'dika, one does not have to check. That we don't have to check, we only have to check in places. The places we have to check are places that people normally go there, and they might bring, sometimes once, or whatever it is, chametz. Why did the Chachamim, why did the rabbis say that one has to check the 2 rows then of a wine cellar? In view of the law that no search is needed in such places as we just mentioned, how do we account for the law given below that both Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel, the houses of Shammai and Hillel, agree that 2 rows of a wine cellar must be searched? The Mishnah continues, Makom shemachnisim by chametz. The sages were referring to a place in which chametz is brought. The Gemara explains that there are 2 types of wine cellars. One type of wine cellar is where wine is taken to be sold. That type of wine cellar does not have to be checked, as opposed to a wine cellar which is for domestic use, where a servant might go during a meal to bring up wine for the guests or whoever it is, and he might bring down with him some chametz. And obviously, therefore, we would have to check there for the chametz. Beis Shammai omrim shtei shuros al pnei chol hamartef. Beis Shammai say 2 rows over the entire front of the wine cellar must be searched. You have to search over the entire front of the wine cellar. Now, what does it mean, this? Well, let's just describe what the situation is. It was a practice of people who had wine in their houses, the barrels, to arrange the barrels in such a way that one laid upon the 2 barrels under it, very much like bricks are laid upon each other, row upon row. Now, Beis Shammai required that 2 layers of barrels be searched. One is the entire vertical wall of barrels facing the front of the cellar from the floor to the ceiling and from left to right. The other layer requiring checking, bedika, is the horizontal layer of barrels facing the ceiling from the front of the cellar to the right, to the back of and from the left to the right. So let's just go a diagram of what we've just said. We have here what we've just explained. This is the wall, the layer of barrels which he described, which Beis Shammai will say that one has to check, and obviously as well the horizontal as well as the vertical, both lines, both rows of barrels. And these ones underneath do not have to be checked. This is one view of Beis Shammai. There is another view of Beis Shammai, what he actually means, because it's not quite clear, and that is one has to check the 2 front vertical walls from top to bottom, and that would be these 2 over here. And that's 2 views of what Beis Shammai mean. Beis Hillel say the 2 outer rows which are the uppermost. Beis Hillel disagree. They define shura, row, in our Mishnah not as an entire wall of barrels, or entire wall of barrels, but rather as one of the many rows in each wall reaching from side to side. Of these rows, only the 2 uppermost in the outer vertical wall must be searched. And we have another diagram here. Here, that would be these 2 rows here, and as with Beis Shammai there is a disagreement. Another view is that Beis Hillel hold that these 2 are the rows, 2 outer rows, which have to be checked. That is the first Mishnah in Pesachim. We look forward to seeing you again very soon to continue. Have a great day.